discriminated against for being queer, shunned for having HIV/AIDS. Sounds tragic, doesn't it? But this was the harsh reality, one that played out in the lives of some of Hollywood's most famous black actors, singers, and celebrities. They didn't just fight to survive, they had to battle for the right to be seen and accepted for who they were. These black actors endured pain, rejection, and the brutal prejudices of Hollywood, a place where fame can come in an instant but vanish just as quickly in bitterness. Today, I bring you 23 heartbreaking life stories, 23 testaments to extraordinary courage. Get your tissues ready because you just might find yourself in tears. 1. Marsha P. Johnson, a symbol of freedom and the mysterious death on the Hudson River. Marsha P. Johnson, a name synonymous with the fight for gay rights in the United States during the 1960s. But few know that behind the glittering lights of the 1969 Stonewall riots, where she became an irreplaceable icon, lies a life filled with pain and secrets buried deep, never fully revealed, about her sexuality and her struggle with the disease of the century. Marsha was born in New Jersey in the body of a boy, but harbored an intense desire to live true to her identity as a girl. Her innocent eyes once lit up at the sight of her mother's dresses. However, that dream was quickly extinguished by the cold rejection of the very family she loved most. Johnson's mother felt ashamed of her child, often lashing out with bitter words. "Homosexuality is lower than that of a dog." These words not only tore Marsha's soul apart, but also etched a deep fear of her own gender identity, forcing her to suppress herself under the guise of resignation. But Marsha's heart never accepted being imprisoned forever. In 1963, she left what was called home to find herself. Amid the sleepless lights and chaotic rhythm of bustling New York, she found solidarity among those once considered outcasts. For the first time in her life, Marsha felt she belonged somewhere she could love freely and be herself. Yet, that freedom came at a heavy price. The bohemian life on New York's cold streets soon pulled her into the cruel vortex of AIDS. The disease ravaged not only Marsha's body, but also cast the shadow of schizophrenia, leaving wounds that could never heal, physically or mentally. But life seemed to have no mercy for Marsha. On a fall morning, July 6, 1992, she was found floating in the cold waters of the Hudson River, shortly after a gay pride parade. Her death was initially ruled a suicide, but Marsha's friends, those who had fought alongside her, insisted otherwise. They painfully recounted the large wound on the back of her head, a mark of violence. Could she have been a victim of prejudice and hatred directed at black LGBTQ+ individuals in a society not yet ready to embrace differences? Marsha's death was not just a loss, it was society's cruel indifference toward those considered outcasts. Though she left this world far too young, Marsha P. Johnson's legacy never faded. She is an immortal symbol of courage, of someone who dared to love, dared to fight for herself, and for those without a voice. 2. Alvin Ailey, the dance legend and a silent end, with AIDS. Alvin Ailey, a name that echoes like a melancholic melody, lingering in the hearts of those who knew him. Ailey was not just a symbol of beauty through ballet's graceful movements, but also a powerful voice for African American culture, always yearning for freedom amidst the suffocating prejudices of 1980s society, a time marked by the HIV/AIDS crisis, when the LGBT community was heavily stigmatized. Behind that radiant smile, however, was a deep loneliness hidden in his struggle to live authentically with his identity, something no one truly knew. Ailey constantly feared he didn't fit into traditional societal standards. Despite speaking out, he couldn't overcome the harsh rejection from the world around him. The whispers about his sexuality suffocated him, trapping him in a body he felt estranged from. Perhaps life had always been cruel to Ailey. Just hours after ringing in the new year of 1989, he was stunned to receive devastating news from his doctor. he had tested positive for HIV. While his loved ones celebrated, Ailey remained silent, burying the heartbreaking truth within. He feared the harsh judgment of society would shatter his spirit more than the disease itself. He worried that his family would be shamed and his career would vanish overnight. This fear became a slow poison, gradually consuming his fragile body. On a cold December day in 1989, as snowflakes blanketed the streets of Los Angeles, Ailey took his final weary breath after a prolonged fever caused by AIDS. Yet his love for family remained unwavering. Before passing, he requested that his doctor tell the media he died from terminal blood dysplasia to protect his mother from the stigma surrounding HIV/AIDS. Ailey's death stands as a painful testament to society's cruelty, a man who didn't just die from a disease, but from the indifference of a world that pushed people to the brink even while they were still alive. 3. Audre Lorde, the LGBT feminist warrior who fought until her last breath. Audre Lorde was renowned not only as a talented poet, but also as a sharp thinker who continuously challenged oppressive systems such as gender discrimination and social injustice, particularly within the LGBT community. As the author of acclaimed works like The Black Unicorn, Sister Outsider, and Zami, A New Spelling of My Name, she delved deeply into gender identity, the power of difference, and often described herself as a black lesbian woman, a poet always fighting for justice. But Audre Lorde was not just a warrior in literature and social activism. She was also a fierce fighter in her personal battle against breast cancer, a disease exacerbated by HIV-induced immune decline that ravaged her body until her final moments. Tragedy struck in the summer of July 1978 when she first learned she had breast cancer and had to undergo a mastectomy to preserve her health. Audre felt as though her entire world had collapsed. However, instead of hiding her pain, she chose to confront it head-on, bravely sharing her battle against the terminal illness in the cancer journals. She candidly expressed the pain, the emotional wounds, and the strength that comes from accepting one's body after illness. Having overcome breast cancer, Audre seemed to have triumphed over fate. But in 1984, the cruel disease returned, metastasizing to her liver, making it increasingly difficult for her frail body to endure. On a cold winter afternoon, November 17, 1992, Audre Lorde took her last breath in the warmth of her modest home, concluding a 58-year journey marked by relentless struggle and dedication. Though she is gone, the legacy she left behind shines brightly, serving as an eternal reminder. Silence has never been the solution to injustice, and courageous voices will always endure the test of time. 4. Prudence Nobanu-Mabel, the painful end of an LGBT icon. Prudence Nobanu-Mabel, her name burned like a blazing fire amid the darkness of prejudice and fear. In 1992, when HIV was not just a terrifying disease, but also a death sentence hanging over the heads of gay individuals rejected by society, Prudence, a political activist, rose without hesitation to publicly disclose her HIV status. However, Prudence's life was a challenging journey, battling not only the disease that eroded her health day by day, but also the cruel indifference of society. For more than 2 decades, Prudence faced HIV not with fear, but with the spirit of an unyielding warrior. Yet even the strongest fighters grow weary. After years of relentless struggle, her immune system gradually weakened. On a summer morning, July 10, 2017, as the first rays of sunlight peeked through, Prudence took her last breath, succumbing to pneumonia complications caused by HIV. She passed away at the age of 45, concluding her courageous battle with the disease. But death could not extinguish the flame she had ignited. For Prudence, she did not just live with HIV, she lived to tell its story. And her life was that story, a tale etched not only in words, but also in bold actions, tireless advocacy, and a legacy that will never fade in the hearts of those who believe in the power of truth and courage. 5. Fela Kuti. The endless melody of resistance and a quiet farewell. Fela Kuti was known as a musical genius who transformed music into the sharpest weapon against corruption and oppression in Nigeria. Not only did he pioneer the Afrobeat genre, a powerful fusion of jazz, funk, and African rhythms, but he also infused every note with a spirit of rebellion and a thirst for freedom. Yet Fela's life was far from a bed of roses. Growing up amid political turmoil, he was arrested over 200 times, his home raided, and faced the heartbreak of losing his beloved mother to a brutal attack. However, Fela's greatest battle wasn't with the government or authoritarian rulers, it was with an invisible enemy: AIDS. In the 1990s, AIDS was not only a deadly disease, but also shrouded in societal stigma. For the Black gay community, the weight of judgment was even heavier, causing Fela to withdraw into the shadows. As time passed, his health deteriorated. The once vibrant Fela, who dominated the stage, gave way to a weary, fragile figure, his exhaustion etched into his gaunt face. No prison or violence had ever silenced him, but AIDS did. On a somber, rainy afternoon, August 2, 1997, Fela took his final breath after a prolonged battle with tuberculosis complications caused by AIDS, leaving behind an immeasurable void in the hearts of millions of fans. Yet, even in death, he remained a powerful voice. Fela's passing forced Nigerian society to confront a truth they had long ignored: the harsh reality of HIV/AIDS and the devastating consequences of silence, which pushed countless innocent lives to the brink of despair. 6. Joseph Beam, the brilliant American writer, and his unfinished work, Brother to Brother. Joseph Beam was an African-American writer, editor, and LGBTQ+ activist who played a pivotal role in bringing the voices of Black gay men into American literature and social movements. In the 1980s, amid rampant racism, homophobia, and the devastating AIDS epidemic within the LGBTQ+ community, Beam emerged as a symbol of courage and determination in the fight for equality and recognition. But fate didn't grant Beam the chance to tell his entire story. AIDS complications began to ravage his frail body. Itchy red lesions appeared on his genitals, accompanied by persistent fevers that drained his strength. Despite this, he avoided public health care facilities, silently enduring the pain to shield himself from the ridicule that could have crushed his spirit. Tragedy struck on a cold, snowy night, December 27, 1988. While diligently working on his cherished project, Brother to Brother, a collection reflecting pieces of his own life, Beam suddenly collapsed at his desk. His family initially thought he was just exhausted, but they had no idea it was his final farewell. Beam passed away just days before his 34th birthday, leaving behind unfinished pages filled with unspoken stories. His death occurred at the peak of the AIDS epidemic in the U.S., but perhaps AIDS wasn't the real killer. It was society's prejudice and the deafening silence of both the public and government that drove countless souls to hopeless ends. However, Beam's legacy didn't end there. His close friend and fellow activist, Essex Hemphill, fought back tears as he completed Beam's unfinished manuscript, publishing it in 1991. Unexpectedly, Brother to Brother quickly became one of the most significant works in American LGBTQ+ literature, vividly portraying the experiences of Black gay men during the most harrowing years of the AIDS crisis. Beam used literature as a tool for activism, affirming that people like him deserve to be seen, heard, and to live authentically with pride in their identities. 7. Bayard Rustin, the man behind the curtain of history and the tragedy of silence. Bayard Rustin was one of the unsung heroes of the American Civil Rights Movement, weaving the crucial threads in the tapestry of the struggle for freedom and justice. As a close advisor to Martin Luther King Jr., he was the strategic mastermind behind the 1963 March on Washington, where the legendary "I Have a Dream" speech echoed in the hearts of millions of Americans. Yet, while the spotlight of history shone on great icons of resistance, Rustin remained in the shadows, scorned by society and even his comrades for one simple reason: he was a gay man. On a spring afternoon in January 1953, Rustin was arrested and jailed for 50 days for lewd conduct after being caught engaging in consensual sex with two men in a parked car in California. This incident became a lifelong stain on his record. In public, he often wore wide-brimmed hats and high-collared coats to avoid being recognized. But worse than the bitter taunts in 1964, he received the devastating news of being HIV positive, the result of unsafe sexual practices. Though he tried to keep it hidden, the information eventually leaked, making him the target of public criticism. For Rustin, the physical pain of illness was perhaps less excruciating than the rejection he faced from an unforgiving society. Even in death, caused by perforated intestines due to AIDS complications in 1987, the stigma did not leave him. His passing wasn't widely publicized, and his name faded into historical obscurity. Rustin's discrimination didn't just come from society, but also from the very communities he had fought tirelessly to serve. He became one of the first influential figures lost to AIDS, a death caused not only by the virus, but also by the cold indifference of societal prejudice. Despite his declining health in his final years, Rustin continued his advocacy for LGBTQ+ rights, fully aware he might be forgotten. But he also understood that silence is the greatest enemy of justice. 8. Rudy Lewis, the golden voice and the mysterious death behind the spotlight. Rudy Lewis was celebrated as one of the legendary voices of the Drifters, known for timeless hits like On Broadway and Up on the Roof. His silky, powerful vocals painted soulful and captivating R&B melodies, leaving an indelible mark on fans. Yet, behind the dazzling stage lights, Rudy's life was a somber tune, ending abruptly when he passed away at just 27, leaving behind unanswered questions. Despite his extraordinary talent, Rudy faced invisible pressures. As a black gay man in a society rife with prejudice, he lived in constant conflict between his true self and the rigid norms of the era. Music became his sole refuge, a space where he could express his authentic emotions freely. However, Rudy's life was far from the dream he yearned for. The weight of societal stigma dragged him into a destructive spiral. Wild parties fueled by alcohol and drugs became his temporary escape from a harsh reality. But they also brought along a silent companion that ravaged his body until the end: AIDS. Tragedy struck on the evening of May 20th, 1964, just hours before the Drifters were scheduled to record Under the Boardwalk. Rudy struggled with severe abdominal pain caused by AIDS-related complications. Within 30 minutes, he took his final breath in a Harlem hotel room. His death was officially recorded as a drug overdose, yet his family suggested he may have suffered from immune system failure, with a sudden heart attack sealing his fate. Regardless of the cause of his death, one undeniable fact remains: Rudy Lewis was a talent the world lost too soon. He wasn't just an artist, he was a symbol for those who dared to live authentically, even when the price was loneliness, unspoken secrets, and ultimately, a quiet death. 9. Gladys Bentley, the rebellious icon and the mystery behind her final note. Gladys Bentley was more than just a talented jazz musician. She was a bold LGBTQ+ icon during the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s. Yet behind the vibrant lights of bustling nightclubs was a life shrouded in mystery, ending quietly with a death that remains controversial to this day. Gladys Bentley was a black lesbian woman in a world unprepared to accept her truth. beneath the bold red lipstick and lively piano tunes was a heart battered by prejudice and isolation. She loved women when it was considered a sin, wore men's clothing when it was taboo, and sang about forbidden desires that people only dared whisper behind closed doors. But the lives of those who dare to live authentically rarely have peaceful endings. Secret affairs with sex workers exposed her to an unknown illness no doctor could diagnose. Her body was covered in blistering red sores, her throat burned, and she coughed incessantly. On a cold, rainy January morning in 1960, Gladys Bentley took her last breath at the age of 52 after a painful struggle with pneumonia. A seemingly simple death, yet it concealed unanswered questions. According to various sources, she may have died from immune system failure, with strange red lesions on her body. Symptoms that would later be associated with AIDS, a disease unnamed at the time. That ambiguity mirrored her life. Mysteries no one dared to touch, pains no one dared to name. She lived like a jazz composition, wild, rule-breaking, and ending abruptly, leaving an echo that forever lingers in the hearts of those who truly listened. 10. Barbara Jordan, the iron voice and the mystery beyond the edge of life. Barbara Jordan was an eternal icon in American political history. She wasn't just the first black woman elected to the U.S. Congress from Texas, but also a fearless, unmistakable voice amid the chaotic waves of her era. Yet behind that resilient exterior, Barbara Jordan carried a secret that was never fully revealed during her lifetime. Jordan was always private about her personal life. She never publicly disclosed her sexual orientation, even though she was often seen sharing intimate moments with psychologist Nancy Earle on the streets of Texas, sparking endless public curiosity about their true relationship. The scrutiny led her into severe anxiety. Instead of explaining or denying, Jordan chose silence, refusing all interviews and focusing on safeguarding her political legacy in a society not yet ready to accept such truths. This silence extended beyond her sexuality, encompassing the reality of her health struggles in her final years. AIDS entered Jordan's life like an unexpected guest. She was devastated upon receiving her HIV-positive diagnosis, but did everything in her power to keep it hidden. On a bitter, cold night on January 17, 1996, she struggled to breathe as chest pains tightened around her heart. Jordan painfully closed the final chapter of her life at the age of 59, reportedly due to pneumonia complications, on an old, worn-out bed, a tragic end for such a distinguished politician. However, many sources suggest that the real cause of her death was HIV/AIDS, a truth veiled behind a curtain of silence and stigma. Her death, surrounded by questions, raises important issues about prejudice, forced silence, and the price of maintaining a perfect public image. 11th. Dee Dee Chamblee, a relentless flame in the fight for LGBTQ+ rights. Dee Dee Chamblee was more than just a transgender activist. She was a symbol of courage and resilience in the battle for LGBTQ+ rights. Growing up in a world unforgiving to those who dared to live authentically, Dee didn't let fear consume her. Instead, she transformed her pain into strength, founding Legender Inc., an organization dedicated to supporting transgender women, particularly those living with HIV/AIDS. However, despite being a beacon for others lost in the darkness of stigma and violence, Dee couldn't illuminate her own life as she battled AIDS. 25 years of fighting AIDS was a journey marked by pain and humiliation. Painful mouth sores and swollen lymph nodes in her neck made even simple movements difficult. She felt helpless in her own body. Yet the physical agony paled in comparison to the cruel mockery from the public and the media. For Dee, being black and LGBTQ+ was already hard enough to be accepted, and her HIV status only doubled the stigma. But Dee refused to let prejudice define her life. In September 2009, during an interview with Piaz magazine, she emotionally declared, I'm tired of being disregarded. I'm tired of people spitting on the sidewalk when they see me. I'm tired of people not acknowledging that I am human. She faced AIDS head-on, openly sharing her treatment experiences with others, and became the first African-American transgender woman to be honored by President Barack Obama as a champion of change during the 30th anniversary of the HIV/AIDS epidemic. 12th, Assotto Saint, the tragic end of a rebellious poet. Assotto Saint wasn't just a poet, musician, and social activist. He was the fierce heartbeat of a generation that dared to love, live, and fight for the truth. During the dark years when HIV/AIDS ravaged communities, Saint chose not to remain silent. He boldly revealed his HIV status, transforming his pain into the sharpest weapon against stigma and oblivion through his poetry and songs. However, even the strongest spirit couldn't cure the ravages of AIDS. In June 1994, under the scorching summer sun of New York, Assotto Saint bid a weary farewell to his partner, Jan Holmgren, taking his final breath at just 36 due to intestinal complications related to HIV/AIDS. He knew his time was short, but instead of letting fear consume him, he used it as fuel for his final creative works. His poetry wasn't just words on a page. It carved deep into the hearts of readers, capturing the essence of real people, their stories, dreams, and unfinished loves. 13. Lorraine Hansberry, the fire starter for dreams that never awoke. Lorraine Hansberry was a brilliant playwright who left an indelible mark on American literature with her classic A Raisin in the Sun. She didn't just write a play, she wrote the pain and injustice faced by black families in America during an era of brutal segregation. Yet, behind the spotlight of her theatrical success, Lorraine was an enigmatic soul, a quiet warrior fighting for the LGBTQ+ community affected by HIV/AIDS when society wasn't ready to face those truths. Secret kisses in the dark, discreet gestures with women, though never publicly acknowledged, became an integral part of her life and work, reflecting an inner struggle between the light of her public persona and her true self, hidden in society's shadows. But before she could fully embrace love, Hansberry was shocked to face pancreatic cancer, believed to have been accelerated by HIV/AIDS. The disease swiftly claimed her life on a spring afternoon in January 1965, when she was only 34 years old. Sadly, many aspects of her personal life, especially her sexual identity and same-sex relationships, were erased from historical records after her death. It's as if part of who she was buried with her fragile body, leaving scattered fragments for future generations to piece together. Hansberry lived like a flame, brief, intense, and impossible to forget. 14th, Octavia Butler, the Voyager, between parallel worlds and an immortal legacy. Octavia Butler was not just an outstanding science fiction writer, she was a challenger of all norms, breaking the boundaries of gender, race, and imagination. But behind the glow of awards and mesmerizing pages was a quiet life that ended abruptly due to an unforeseen health crisis. Tragedy struck on the morning of February 24, 2006, as Butler was walking around her small home in Seattle. She unexpectedly slipped and hit her head hard on a cobblestone path. What seemed like a harmless fall marked the beginning of a painful tragedy. A stroke soon after claimed her life at the age of 58, leaving profound grief in the hearts of her admirers. For a woman who wrote about adaptation and survival in the harshest conditions, her sudden death felt like a cruel paradox of fate. 15. Bobby DeBarge, the falsetto voice of R&B, echoing through music and struggles. Bobby DeBarge was born into a family where music was the heartbeat of daily life. From a young age, he and his siblings spent countless hours harmonizing, crafting a unique, soulful sound that later rocked the R&B world. Bobby's voice was extraordinary, His falsetto could soar to breathtaking heights, astonishing audiences everywhere. But Bobby's life wasn't just about success. Behind the spotlight, he battled personal demons, especially addiction. His life took a darker turn when he was diagnosed with AIDS, a heavily stigmatized disease at the time, leading him to withdraw and hide his illness from the public. Despite declining health, Bobby continued to make music, holding on to hope for better days. However, by 1995, his condition worsened, and he spent his final days in a nursing home in Grand Rapids, Michigan. On the morning of August 16, 1995, Bobby quietly closed the final chapter of his life due to AIDS complications at just 39, leaving an irreplaceable void in the R&B world. 16. Essex Hemphill, a voice of resistance and an unyielding CA. Essex Hemphill was not just a renowned poet and writer. He was an uncompromising warrior in the fight against harsh discrimination towards black gay men and people living with HIV/AIDS. Fearlessly addressing sensitive topics like sexuality and death, Hemphill couldn't escape his life's greatest adversary, HIV/AIDS. His journey was marked by pain and courage as he battled not just the virus, but also the deep-seated societal prejudices. Upon discovering his HIV-positive status, Hemphill chose not to remain silent. Instead, he transformed his pain into a sharp weapon, vividly portrayed through his poetry and writings, exposing the raw truths and injustices faced by black gay men. As time passed, his health deteriorated, and AIDS-related complications gradually weakened his body. In November 1995, Hemphill took his final breath at 38. He didn't just succumb to the disease, but also to the societal neglect and stigma that robbed many like him of the chance to live fully. 17th. Toshi Reagon, when melody becomes a final testament. Toshi Reagon wasn't just a talented musician, she was a fierce LGBTQ+ activist who used music as a weapon to fight for justice, equality, and HIV/AIDS awareness. Her music wasn't merely captivating melodies, but acts of protest, anthems for those marginalized by society. However, no matter how strong her spirit, her body couldn't withstand the harsh complications of HIV/AIDS. In 2022, Toshi took her final breath at the age of 58, concluding a life filled with resilience and advocacy. Her death was not just the loss of a gifted artist, but a stark reminder of the ongoing injustices faced by vulnerable communities in society. 18. Timum T. West, Poetry, Rhythm, and a Courageous Journey Against Silence. Timum T. West was not just a renowned poet and rapper, he was a courageous LGBTQ+ activist. As the author of acclaimed poetry collections like Red Dirt Revival, a poetic memoir, In 6 Breaths, and Flirting, he captured the raw journey of self-discovery and inner struggles. What set Timum apart wasn't just his artistic talent, but his bravery in openly living with HIV. Instead of letting the disease define him, he redefined what it meant to live. He transformed his struggles into strength, inspiring others, educating communities, and combating stigma. Timum lived in the light of truth, without fear, without hiding. The most heartbreaking part for him was realizing that despite medical advances in HIV/AIDS treatment, stigma still persisted, woven into society's gaze and silences. 19. Max Robinson, the trailblazing journalist who became a voice for change in media. Max Robinson was a pioneering African-American journalist celebrated for being the first black anchor on a major U.S. television network. Despite facing numerous racial barriers in broadcasting, Robinson broke through in 1978 as co-anchor of ABC's World News Tonight. His career wasn't just about reporting the news, it was a fight for social change, racial equality, and ensuring every voice was heard in mainstream media. Tragically, Robinson's life took a heartbreaking turn in the mid-1980s when he was diagnosed with AIDS. During an era of intense stigma, he became one of the first public figures to openly share his diagnosis, challenging misconceptions and fears surrounding the disease. But AIDS complications didn't spare him. Persistent coughs, high fevers, and severe mouth sores eroded his health day by day. On December 20th, 1988, Robinson took his final breath at the age of 49, concluding a remarkable battle against AIDS. His legacy remains a testament to courage, breaking barriers, and using one's voice to spark change. 20. Sylvester James Jr., the Disco King, and his final song. Sylvester James Jr., known as the King of Disco, was famous for his unique falsetto voice and bold, captivating performances. He was not only a musical icon, but also a trailblazer in the fight for LGBT rights during the 1970s and 1980s. With his hit song, You Make Me Feel Mighty Real, 1978, Sylvester soared to the peak of fame, becoming an anthem for the LGBTQ+ community. However, that dazzling spotlight couldn't overshadow the dark shadow of the AIDS epidemic, a nightmare that claimed his life far too soon. In the 1980s, as the HIV/AIDS crisis raged, the LGBT community became the target of severe stigma and discrimination. Sylvester, who once sang about freedom and boundless love, couldn't escape that ruthless darkness. After suffering a prolonged high fever, he was shocked by his HIV-positive diagnosis, a sudden death sentence for his vibrant life. But instead of succumbing to fear or hiding, Sylvester bravely went public about his illness, transforming his pain into strength. Through music, he advocated for empathy and support for others facing the same struggle. However, on a cold December morning in 1988, after 8 long years battling the disease, Sylvester passed away from AIDS complications, his body ravaged with sores as he lay on his hospital bed at the age of 41. His death left an irreplaceable void in the hearts of his fans, yet perhaps he never truly left. Today, You Make Me Feel still echoes at Pride celebrations worldwide, a testament that Sylvester, the King of Disco, will never fade. His voice will forever resonate in the hearts of those who cherish freedom. 21st. Willi Ninja, the godfather of voguing and an immortal legacy under the ballroom lights. Willi Ninja was more than just a dancer or performer. He was a symbol of freedom, breaking boundaries of gender, race, and identity within LGBTQ+ culture. Known as the godfather of voguing, Willi Ninja transformed body movements into a language, a form of resistance, and an art symbol that transcended the ballroom stage. But the graceful voguing on drag ball floors couldn't last forever. On a scorching June morning in New York in 2003, Willi Ninja collapsed after receiving an AIDS-positive diagnosis. What was even more heartbreaking was that he had to continue working to support his elderly mother, unable to afford proper health care for himself. This led to his gradual loss of vision and eventual paralysis. After years of battling the disease, on a cool September day in 2006, as golden leaves fell outside his window, Willi softly said goodbye to the children of his house. The final leaf drifting to the ground marked the end of his painful journey. 21st. Gil Scott-Heron, a revolutionary voice in music and activism, whose legacy shines despite his battle with HIV/AIDS. Gil Scott-Heron was a renowned singer, songwriter, poet, and activist. His politically charged lyrics, fused with jazz, soul, and spoken word, made his music a powerful voice in the civil rights movement and the fight for social change. Despite his success, his personal life was marred by addiction, particularly heroin, which severely impacted his career and health until his final moments. When HIV knocked on his door in the early 2000s, it didn't just steal his peace, it gnawed at fragments of his soul, unfinished dreams, and broken relationships. Strangely, during his darkest days, his music burned brighter than ever. I'm New Here, 2010, wasn't a greeting to the world, but more like a final whisper, as if reminding himself, even if this body decays, I am still new in every breath, every melody. On a sweltering summer afternoon, May 27, 2011, the heart that had fought through pain, loneliness, and the cruel disease finally stopped beating. But Gil Scott-Heron never truly left. He left behind a legacy that wasn't just music, it was unfiltered truth, raw pain without embellishment, and hope that burned even as the final spark faded. 22. Ricky Wilson, the final legacy of the B-52's legend. Ricky Wilson was famously known as the lead guitarist of the legendary new wave band, the B-52s. His innovative guitar riffs and dynamic performance style played a vital role in shaping the band's unique sound, blending new wave, punk, and quirky pop. However, behind the spotlight was a silent battle with the devastating illness of HIV/AIDS. Ricky's life took a tragic turn when he was diagnosed with AIDS in 1984. Despite the pain, he chose to keep his illness a secret from his bandmates, not wanting to burden anyone with worry or cause unnecessary drama. Fate struck on the evening of October 12, 1985, right after a performance with the B-52s. Ricky collapsed backstage, falling to the ground. Although emergency services arrived quickly, Ricky couldn't be saved. He passed away at just 32, taking with him an unfinished musical dream. Ricky's death from AIDS-related complications was a tremendous loss, not just for the band, but as a stark reminder of the devastating impact of the HIV/AIDS epidemic. His story reflected the widespread misunderstanding and stigma surrounding the disease at the time. As we wrap up today's video, let's take a moment to reflect on the profound lessons left behind by the 23 remarkable stars of color who passed away due to AIDS. Behind each name was a great individual, people who not only changed the world with their talent, but also with their courage in facing a devastating disease during a time when HIV/AIDS was still shrouded in fear and heavy stigma. But beyond all that, their stories are not just tales of tragedy. They serve as powerful reminders of the strength of education, the importance of raising awareness, and the irreplaceable value of compassion. These are not just stories to mourn, they are calls to action, to break down prejudices, spread understanding, and continue the fight against HIV/AIDS with the deepest courage and empathy. What are your thoughts on these stories? Let us know in the comments below. All the information in this video has been gathered from reliable sources and is for reference purposes only. Don't forget to hit the like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on our upcoming content.